Hey, what is going on? I want to have a look at this animation on Peak Span Capital's website today. They're saying we climb together, we scale together, we grow together, and back to we climb together. We're going to make this in Webflow. I'm also going to show you some little accessibility and responsiveness improvements that I think we can make to their implementation here. First, we'll start with a quick inspection, see how they're doing it. Then we'll build it in Webflow the easy way, and then I'll show you the improvements.
Hey there, Webbay.
So let's go ahead and inspect what's going on here. It's changing the breakpoint because we've opened up Chrome DevTools here, but I'm going to grab this little inspector key here, and we can see that, as these are rotating, they're just rotating up, and there must be some sort of window here with overflow hidden that's preventing us from seeing, as things come in and out. Now, the accessibility concern I have here is that we've got one H1, which is this word we, and then we have like a wrapper div here with the ID of flip and a class is line. And then there's two wrappers inside there. These are what's getting animated, as you can tell by all of these changing properties here. And inside those, we have four H1s each. So we have these blue H1s and these green H1s that are on different eases, which is why they're kind of moving at different rates. So you can see this is probably pretty confusing for search engines because we have H1 we, H1 climb, H1 scale, grow, blah, 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 repeat all again, all H1s, and then an H1 down here together. So I would probably just use regular text for this and make an H1 somewhere that's we scale together, hide it, and call it a day. Anyways, the other things, if we do look at the classes here, so we're getting a font size on is H1 of 3 rem, but a line height of 5 rem. So there's some line height differences going on, which is interesting. And we can tell down here, so right here where we have translate 3D, so this is like a move function, they're scaling by 5 rem, or negative 5 rem to negative 10 rem, negative 15 rem, and then back to 0. So essentially what's going on is we have a window, which is, I believe it's probably this div right here. Does it have, whatever has overflow hidden? Yeah, it's this one. And then within that, we have the two wrapper divs that have all of our words scaling up and down. Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at how to build this in Webflow. I think that's a good little summary of what's going on. All right, let's get started. I've got a bare bones setup here. As you can see, section, padding global, our container, a layout, which is just a grid here divided in two. And then our grid on the left, we have our content div. This is where our text is going to go. And on the right, we have the background video. So inside of content, let's go ahead and drop this div. We'll call this top row heading. And now our content div, we need to set that to flex and center so that that ends up in the center there. And we'll go ahead and just copy top row heading. And now that this is flex center, we also want to set it to vertical so that these sit on top. And we don't want to align center, we want to align it to the left, but we want to justify it to center now that it is direction vertical. Okay, so that is our content div, and we have these two wrappers right here where our text is going to go. And I'm going to rename this to bottom row heading. Okay, now let's drag some text in the first one, and this is we. And then we also need our next text element, and this is the one that's going to be all the bunch of different stuff. So we have text block. Let's go ahead and give this text block a H1 style class, and we'll set the font size here to something like 5 rem, and the height to just 1 unit list dimensions. And, I'm going to set the font actually on the body element. So I'll come out here, click body, all pages, and we'll just use system UI for this. Okay, let me get rid of navigator so that you can see we've got an H1 style, and that's taking up all the space because it's set to block, but we can set it to inline block and we're good to go now. And then we've got some more text here. This also needs that H1 style. This is going to be I think the first one is climb is the very first one that we want. And now you can see these are right next to each other because we've made them different text elements. So let's go ahead and take top row heading, and we'll give this display of flex. Zoom in here for you. And between the columns, we want, so let's say 1 rem. You might want to set this using EMs, but we'll just go with rem for now. Anyways, so we've got our top row, and then we have H1 and then an H1. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command Option G here to wrap that in a div block. And we'll call this our, what do we want to call this? This will be our marquee text window. And now within that marquee text window, we're going to have two text wrappers. So I'm going to go ahead and drop another div, and this one is going to be called marquee text. We'll call it mover for now. And I'm going to copy that. And now H1, the climb H1 is going to come in there. And now we're just going to copy paste that 4 times. And this is climb, scale, grow, and then it goes back to climb. And now these are next to each other. So let's go ahead and put flex on marquee text mover. What's that? Flex vertical, and align it to the left. So that is great. These are just going to kind of scroll up through each other. And then we also need to actually copy the whole thing to the bottom, so we can delete the one we already made and collapse this and paste it. And now you can see we've got we climb, scale, grow, climb, we climb, scale, grow, climb. And what we're going to want to do is we'll set one to be green and one to be blue. So let's take this marquee text mover. We'll give it a combo class is green, and set it to some sort of green here. Some sort of not completely ugly green. Okay. And marquee text mover, combo class of is blue. And we'll give this some sort of blue color. All right, that's looking good, kind of minty. And now one of these is relative and one of these is going to be position absolute. So let's go ahead and we'll just set the green one to be relative for now and the blue one to be position absolute. And you'll notice nothing actually really happened. Let's go ahead and set the marquee text window to be the relative wrapper. So position relative for this one. And what we need to do now is we need to tell where our absolute one, which is this blue one, where to go. So we'll just hit the full button here. Zoom in so you can see that. So that's set to full. And when we do that, we see that the text comes and lands right on top of our green text there. So if I took marquee text mover and set this to 9, will it come on top? It will. So we can play out with a Z index on depending on which one we want to be on top. I'm not going to leave any Z index for now. We'll just leave it how it is. And that is good to go. We like this. Now let's add that together text down there. I can just grab this we text and paste it, and I'll type together. I think they did a period on their site. So that's good. Now obviously we don't want to see scale, grow, and climb all on the first instance. So let's go ahead and select that. We have our marquee text movers here, both of them. Let's get the window, and now this is going to be the key one. So this one's going to be doing a lot of work. The very one thing we're going to do is we're going to set overflow to hidden, but it's not going to hide anything because all of that relative text inside of the marquee text mover relative wrap is taking up space still. So what we need to do is we need to set a fixed height on our window. And if we set the fixed height to 5 rem, which is the same height of our text, then our window is going to be exactly as big as it needs to be, with a caveat on our lowercase g, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But anyways, we went ahead and set the height to 5 rem. Let's set overflow to hidden, and now we can see we're getting a heading that actually makes sense and looks good, that we can start working on our animation now. So for this animation, I'm just going to hop over to the interactions pane here, and on a page trigger, we'll click the plus, and we're going to do this on page load. We want it to trigger on all of our breakpoints, and when the page starts loading and when the page finishes loading, let's go ahead and do it on page finishes loading. We'll start an animation, click the plus button here. We'll call this marquee text. Enter. Okay, now this is where things are going to get fun. We're going to be essentially just, moving this up 5 rem, moving it up another 5 rem, and then up another 5 rem. So let's do this first one here. I'm going to click the plus, and we're going to do the transform move. Now we need to set an initial state. So let's set an initial state of 0 rem, and we'll click this set as initial state box. And then the next step, notice I'm using selected element here. These have the same class, but I'm going to use selected element just so we can see. But in the interactions pane, it's going to be hard to know which is which a little bit. I'll show you. We can look at how the class is being highlighted to know which one we're actually working with. Anyways, let's go ahead and add the next one, which is a move of -5 rem, right? The amount of the text size that we're doing. So the reason this is not very maintainable is if we wanted to change the size of the heading text, we'd have to go and change the whole, that window for one and the interaction. And when we look at the improved version of this, we'll look at how we can make that a little bit better. So anyways, we set this to -5 rem, and then we want to do another interaction where we move it to -10 rem. And now we can see we've got grow coming in there. Let me see if I can get rid of, the navigator. So I'm going to select that. And you can see the G is getting cut off a little bit. So we'll have a look at how to fix that too. And we'll move this to -15 rem for the final one. Now climb is showing again, but it's being overlapped by climb here. So that's something important to know. And then the very last one is we need to move and we need to wrap it back to 0 rem, but we'll do it with a duration of 0 seconds here, so that it just immediately snaps back and then can start all over from the beginning, assuming that we loop this thing. Okay, now we need to do the same with the second one. So I'm going to grab the second one here, and it's going to be the exact same process. Move starts at 0 rem. That's the initial state. And then on this one, we're going to move to -5 rem, which means, -5 rem. So it's moving up. The duration is 0. And then we move again to -10 rem. And that is good. Sorry, I said duration 0 up here, but it's not. And you can see these second ones are highlighting there, so we can tell which one we're actually working with in each step. -15 rem for this next one. And then finally back to 0 rem, and this one is the one that gets the duration of 0 seconds. So now if we save and we loop it and preview, we can see it's just kind of looping through like a marquee, which maybe that's what you want, but they're also both moving at the same rate. So on all of these, we set the easing to be linear on all of these. So let's go ahead and change that now. So I want to change it doesn't make sense to add a easing to the first one, but on this one, this one, this one, and this one. So I'm holding control to select all these. I'm going to change the easing to something like out quad. And then I'm going to select this one, this one, this one, and this one. And I'll change the easing to something like out cubic. And we'll save and preview. And now we can see we're getting that kind of fancy little lag effect between the two because we've set 2 different easings. So this is starting to look really good. Obviously, there's some stuff we need to fix, and each duration is happening too fast. So let's set all these middle ones to 1 second and see if that looks any better. I think it's good for now. You're kind of getting the sense that we're pretty close. I would probably play with the easings on this one here, but for what we wanted to achieve, I think it's pretty good. So now let's go ahead and fix why this G is getting cut off. And also we can see, when climb is showing that the stuff from below is visible too. What I'm going to do is I am going to not use rem units for our H1 style here. So we can see we've set it to 5 rem. What I'm instead going to do is come to our top row heading here, or actually I'm going to come to the content div. So one of the parents, I'm going to set the text size there. So right here, I'll set the size to 5 rem and the height to 1 unitless height. And now within that, I'm going to set our text sizes to 1 EM. So 1 EM is going to inherit the font size from the parent element, in this case, top row heading, which is inheriting from content. So we're good to go there. And then, so all of our H1s are 1 EM, and we can see everything's the same size, but now I can change on content the text size, and everything's going to change everywhere else. But we can see that this is getting cut off, right? Because we manually set that to 5 rem. So we'll get our marquee text window and set the height to 1 EM instead of 5 rem. And now we can see that we're able to see everything. I'm also going to remove this C and just make the first one a G, because it'll be a little bit easier to work with while we're troubleshooting this issue that we have with our G letter. Okay, so if I take the H1 style and rather than give it a unitless line height of 1, if we up this to kind of like 1.2, then we see it cuts off even more here, but I can take the window and make the height 1.2 EM now, and we're able to see the full G. And we see we've broken our animation because we're translating this thing by 5 rem each time. So the -5 rem, -10 rem. So let's go ahead and fix that, and we'll use percentage instead. So let's come back to our interactions, page load, and edit this. And rather than move these -5 rem, we're going to move them -100%. And it's actually going to change for each one. And for the initials, we will change these both to 0%. So let's see. So we see that there's something going on here, because in the case where our H1s are relative, moving it 100% is going to move it. If we're moving text mover 100%, let's come into styles pane here. And we're on the is green, which is the one that is relative, right? Yes, this is position relative. So if I come to our transforms and I look at move and we move negative 25%, we can see that now behind here is showing scale. And then we can move this. I want to go to negative 50%, I believe. Yep, grow. Negative 75 will take us to climb again. No, not climb. Yeah, back to climb. And then we have to go back to 0 since there's 4. So we're essentially taking 100% and dividing by 4 for our relative ones. But for the absolute ones, this one here, the blue ones, if I now take our 3D transform and let me get rid of navigator and I move by negative 25%, we can see it hasn't gone nearly very far because it doesn't have the same size that our relative ones go. So this one's going to have to go like negative 100%, and that looks good, then negative 200%, then negative 300%, and then back to 0. So a little bit tricky there, but let's reset that transform. And on the first one, that's looking good. Now we can come back into our interaction and we know what we need to do. So this first one, this is not the one going to negative 100%. This is the green one, which is position relative. So negative 25%. And the next one will be negative 50%. And this last one will be negative 75%. And the final one will be back to 0%. It's looking like I screwed something up, but let's go ahead and move on real quick. So 0, 0, that was negative 25. This one goes to negative 100, negative 50. Let's just go to negative 200%, negative 75%, and negative, what was it, 300%. And then back to 0%, back to 0%. Okay, let's play and see what we get. Yeah, it's working. Something I'll do is I'll change this G back to a C so that we have some good looking text. And yeah, things are going good, but we are matching the E's on something here. So something's not entirely right. Let's go into our interaction. Let's click the cog. Let's double check all of our E's. So I have out quad and out quad. Yes, that is what's not working. So I think we want out quad for the first and out cubic for the second. So if somehow that got changed back to out quad, who knows what I did. And let's preview. And now we see this thing is scrolling just as we need it. Okay, and we're still at 7 rem for text, but remember, we made this thing quite a bit more maintainable by setting text size on our content. So let's change this back down to 5. And now if we preview, our interaction still works. So by understanding units and using percent and stuff rather than hard-coded rem values, we've made this much more maintainable and changeable if we needed to make a small design change. The other thing we can do, like I said, is not forget our H1. So I would just drag an H1 in here and type we scale together or whatever the client, thinks is their main H1 that they want on this page. That's something definitely to consider, and just hide it. And so now we've, given, we're not going to have any problems with the audit down here. For mobile, all I would do for this is, let's see, we'll come to tablet, and I think they just make this background video stretch the whole thing. So let's make the width 100%, and we will set the position to absolute. Of course, that's going to break because we haven't told the parent to be relative. So layout is the parent, and this needs position relative, and now our video is sticking in there nicely. And we've broken a little bit of something else. Let's see. So layout, we can just kind of, let's take this and we'll delete this column, and that's fine. And then what we'll do is we'll give the layout we'll just give it a height of 30 rem for now. I'm not a big fan of setting definite heights, but you'll probably need to set like a, set like a height of, I would set a min height in this case of 42 rem. And we'll just bring it down until it's something we like. And then, of course, we would tell the background video to be 100% the height of its parent as well, so that we have something that's a little bit better. Of course, we need to adjust our padding. So padding global, this is going to go to 0 on left and right sides. And then on the layout, or actually let's do it on the content, we can add our padding here down to 1 rem on each side. And get rid of navigator, and now we can check and see, okay, it's looking pretty good, but we need to reduce the text size on mobile. So of course, we made that easy on ourselves. We just come to content, sorry, not content. Yes, content. And bring this down to something like 4 rem is good. If you like this video, do not forget to subscribe. Also, you should definitely check out my video on horizontal marquees using just HTML and CSS. Super cool way to make marquees really easily. I'll link the video right up here. So be sure to check that out. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.